So, good evening, Chuck. How are you doing at the moment?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing really well. We're just starting rehearsals this week for the tour coming up in Europe.
This year, you're also releasing a new album, Bellum, and it translates to prepare for war. What specific battles or conflicts is Testament preparing for with this album?
I don't think it's Testament. I think it's the world preparing for war. Probably the closest thing to World War III in this lifetime that we're possibly could happen. I thought it was an appropriate title for the record, considering what's going on in our world, especially the Ukraine. I see how much suffering and killings and what the children and how people must be feeling. And here we are in the world and in America, and everything's fine right now. And but people all over the world don't have it so good and so easy. And so it's like prepare yourself. You never know what all of a sudden everything here in America is so nice right now. What if it changes? So it's a message for everybody to prepare. Something can change.
What do you make of these crazy times?
Well, I mean, it's sad. I mean, it all starts with who's in control and who's in charge. Politics have got so out of hand and has divided a lot of people and people taking sides. And it never used to be like that, even amongst our friends, when we'd have friends, we never knew if they're Republicans or Democrats. We just knew they were our friends. But in the current times, who is Republican and Democrat. It's kind of sad. It's so when you get together with friends, you say, okay, we're friends, no politics. We're just having friends like we used to. We're not going to argue about each other's feelings.
So you mentioned that Eric Peterson has found a way to keep the songwriting fresh and modern sounding. What specific elements made this album feel contemporary while still preserving Testament's classic thrash sound?
Well, I think Eric just having a wide range of jam sessions with Chris Dovis. Has spent a lot of time at Eric's house, them two downstairs just jamming. At first, when I hear the music, it sounds like it's just a lot of jamming. It doesn't make sense, like doesn't sound like songs yet. So I think by them really putting time, a lot of time, they worked really hard, and it shows in the end what they finally put together for arrangements. And I think when we all got together as a band before we started recording, we all made sure that we were all happy with the arrangements and the parts. And that's where we made sure we moved things around and made sure it's correct. But I think, having Chris's being a younger player, he's 27 years old. He grew up with a different style of heavy metal than I have. So maybe he's bringing a newer style, maybe a current style that he likes to the band. And maybe that's even making Eric challenging him and pushing him a little more to write more. But I think Eric just has a wide variety of riffs on this record, which I think makes the record have not just be one straight line. It definitely has a lot of hills and valleys throughout the songs that we wrote.
And what was instead the lyrical approach to Parabellum? Was it like Titans of Creation or something entirely different?
No, I mean, when we wrote Parabellum, me and Alex wrote that song lyrically, and we were inspired by the insurrection on January 6th. And so that's kind of was our inspiration writing the song. And so it was like they were storming. I took it as a metaphor, like those people were storming the gates and people on the other side had to prepare for war. They had to prepare to defend themselves. So it was a good, strong title or chorus line, Parabellum. So it's like, okay, how we can make this work. We're inspired to write about what happened, but we definitely want to make it a theme of war like we have with the rest of the stuff.
You said it's gonna be hard to choose what songs to play live because there are so many to choose from. What makes these songs particularly exciting for live shows?
Well, I mean, we just started rehearsing. I think we've only played three new ones at practice to see how they feel. So we haven't played the other ones live. When we make a record, we don't practice them. We just go in the studio and record them. So we don't know how they feel live until after it's done. So, but so far it's feeling pretty good.
So differently to Titans of Creation, Juan Ortega handled only the recording, and the mixing was done by Jens Bogren and mastered by Tony Lindgren. Has this new team delivered the final result that you were expecting?
I think so. We've been so used to working with Andy Sneap. When we first started work with Andy, me and Eric had to fly there. We had to be there at the mixes and have a tight grip on it. But over time working with him, he developed to know what we wanted. So we didn't have to give him any direction. He just did it what he does and made it sound great. So we were a little nervous that Andy couldn't do this record. So we were like, okay, we had to pick a producer. And Jens, I think, was the top of the list of what he did and what we were hoping to get. But we were hoping that maybe he could push his talents a little more, because what he does is more for a black metal, death metal stuff that he's doing. How is he going to do on a Testament record, especially if there's a ballad? I haven't heard him mix any ballads yet. So I was kind of scared and nervous. And during the first mixes, we were getting close, but we just weren't getting the final thing, because I think there was a little bit of a miscommunication from our English, from the way we were trying to describe things, what we wanted, and the way he interpreted it. So in the end, once we thought about it, we said, you know what? I don't think he understands what we're trying to say. So we had to be technical. So Chris Dobus, he graduated Berklee School of Music. He explained it very technically, what frequencies to use and put in and pull out. And he did it. And once he did it, it started coming to life. And it started to be like, okay, we're getting closer and closer. And then vocally, I wanted to make sure that it just wasn't dry. I wanted to make sure it had some feeling, and in the ballad to just make it feel big. And in the end, he did a really good job with everything he did.
You describe the music as unflinchingly human in an age of where technology is always accelerating. How has your own relationship with technology influenced your perspective on these themes?
I don't know if it's an influence on things, but it was more of an awareness and the what ifs, especially with AI technology. Technology that's just collects information, and when are they going to get smart enough to make decisions for themselves? I don't know if you've been, but in San Francisco, we have taxis with no drivers. There's no drivers in the cars in these taxis. That was like blowing my mind. And I went to a restaurant where the robot was clearing all the dishes off the table and taking them in the back. So all this technology is just really just coming into our world. And I'm sure people that are designing these things are always trying to advance and take it further and further and further. So if it's about learning, when is it going to learn too much and take over?
As Testament approaches their 40th anniversary, how does Parabellum represent where the band is today versus where you started?
Well, I think we've always walked the line of being Testament and always trying to sound like Testament and never trying to sound like anybody else. But where we're at today, I think if somebody would not ever know or ever hear of Testament and they heard our new record, they might think it's a new band. It doesn't feel like songs in a band that's just going through the motions and making records. We're still excited about creating and being challenged and trying new things. And that's the beauty of art, is that the sky's the limit. It just depends on how people accept it or not. So, but if it's done good and right, it should be accepted, because if it's done bad, of course, you should know that, yeah, it's not going to be good for you.
Hopefully, it will happen in many, 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 many years. But if you had to think of a farewell show or tour, would you approach it like Black Sabbath, like with a live send-off, or like Deep Purple that they will keep on playing until they don't play anymore?
Well, I don't know. That's kind of tough because, of course, everybody will say I'll play to the end and die on stage, you know. But I don't, you know, I love what music has done for me, and I'm cherish all the moments I've had in 40 years doing stuff. But maybe there's going to be some time. I mean, I'm 63 years old right now, so what's going to happen? 7 years, I'll be 70. Time's going to fly by quick. Do I want to enjoy life and friends and family, or do I want to just try to keep pleasing fans and the rest of the people? So you have to make that decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to enjoy the world and be home with your family and friends, you know, and retire and that's what it's about? Or just keep going and pounding the pavement because it gets harder and harder and harder. It's never easy, it gets easier as the older you get.
And also, Megadeth announced their last album and their farewell tour as well. What is your point of view on this news, and how do you think it will impact the music world?
I mean, I love Megadeth, and it'd be a shame not to keep hearing new Megadeth stuff. But maybe Dave's drew the line in the sand himself, like we're talking about, and said, I've had a great career, I've got plenty of money. What else is there in life? Family, friends, things like that. Because musicians don't always have that opportunity because you're always making records and on tour. You don't have a normal life. So maybe some people want normal lives, maybe at the end of their life. I don't know. So I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for Dave, but for him to make that decision, something has to be triggering that for him to make that decision. Either maybe it's health, I don't know, maybe it's tired of the business, I don't know, but I guess it's good that to announce it so people prepare or people could come or there could be a giant celebration kickoff, farewell. So we're going to sell a lot of tickets, see all the fans say hey to him one more time. That's awesome, but I don't know what Dave's thinking. I don't know.
So, Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me. Is there anything else that you want to add to our readers and viewers?
Just that we're very excited to get out there and play this record. I think we're going on tour next month. We're going to play two new songs, and by the end, add a third song. So we'll see if how much of this record we play, because usually when bands go out and play live, they pick maybe one song or something off the new record. We're excited to play more off of this record. So we'll see how it goes.